A new California bill would add warning labels to social media platforms. Musicians demand music labels drop their Internet Archive lawsuit. And Chinese regulators are investigating NVIDIA for potential antitrust violations. It's Tuesday, December 10th, and this is Engadget News. California Attorney General Rob Bonta and Assemblymember Rebecca Bauer-Kahan have proposed a new bill, AB 56, that would require social media companies to put a warning label on their platforms to disclose their mental health risks. Citing social media platforms' harnessing of addictive features and harmful content for the sake of profits, Attorney General Bonta says that consumers should have access to information about platforms that could impact their mental health. The current bill lacks detail on how much information these warning labels should have or how they should appear, but mentions the Cyberbullying Protection Act and the Online Violence Prevention Act as possible precedent for such a requirement. Bonta and Bauer-Kahan's new bill follows an open letter signed by 42 attorneys general, Bonta included, that called for Congress to require a Surgeon General's warning label on social media. The U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy proposed the idea himself in an essay for the New York Times opinion section back in June. A Surgeon General's warning label requires congressional action to actually be put in place, but could prove effective in changing behavior in the same way it has for tobacco products. You can trace a lot of the recent commotion around children and social media to an advisory on social media and youth mental health that the U.S. Surgeon General published in 2023. The advisory claimed that social media could have a profound risk of harm to the mental health and well-being of children and adolescents, and that children and adolescents who spend more than 3 hours a day on social media face double the risk of mental health problems. A warning label is unlikely to completely fix things, and social media isn't the sole cause of all children's problems. But labels are another level that can be pulled to change things. A wider-reaching Texas bill that required social media companies block teens from seeing harmful content was struck down a few months ago. But requiring social media warning labels, especially given California's legal history, seems much more feasible. Mental health impacts are just one of the risks children face online, though. According to the Federal Trade Commission, there's still mass surveillance to deal with, too. Musicians Tegan and Sara, Open Mike Eagle, Kathleen Hanna of Bikini Kill, and more have signed a letter organized by Fight for the Future demanding that music labels drop their lawsuit against the Internet Archive, the online library and nonprofit best known for the Wayback Machine. Instead, the letter offers alternative ways that the lives of musicians could be materially improved by partnering with organizations like the Internet Archive to preserve original recordings and music culture, allowing musicians to keep 100% of merchandise sales, and ending vertical investments in streaming services like Spotify. The advent of streaming services already made being a working musician highly unprofitable, but as the letter notes, things like the pandemic and Live Nation's monopoly on ticket sales have made it nearly impossible to perform without some kind of extra expense. The original lawsuit put forth by labels like Sony Music Entertainment and Universal Music Group was specifically targeted at the Internet Archive's Great 78 project, which aims to preserve music recorded on 78 RPM records. The project has over 400,000 recordings available to stream, including music from well-known artists like Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday, and Frank Sinatra. If the labels win their lawsuit, the Internet Archive could be on the hook for up to $621 million in damages to account for the music streamed through the archive since 2006. Music isn't the only front where the Internet Archive is fighting. The organization recently lost its appeal in an ongoing lawsuit with publishers over digital book lending. The Internet Archive claims its digital book library can lend out ebooks under the fair use doctrine, but multiple judges have now disagreed. NVIDIA, the graphics chip maker and recent backbone of the AI industry, is under investigation by Chinese regulators over potential antitrust violations. That's according to the New York Times. The concerns center on the acquisition of Mellanox Technologies, a computer networking company NVIDIA bought in 2020. As part of the conditions of that acquisition, Chinese regulators required NVIDIA to provide information about new products to rivals within 90 days of making them available to NVIDIA. China's State Administration for Market Regulation is kicking off its investigation because it believes that those terms were violated. This would not be the first time NVIDIA has been investigated for monopolistic behavior. The U.S. Department of Justice reportedly launched its own antitrust investigation into NVIDIA in September of this year. But it has a different flavor in the context of the escalating trade war between the U.S. and China. On December 1st, the U.S. Department of Commerce announced export restrictions and sanctions on 140 Chinese companies producing chip-making tools and on China-bound shipments of high-bandwidth memory chips. The goal was fairly clear. The U.S. wanted to limit China's ability to develop advanced AI by preventing it from creating the kinds of chips used to train and run it. This fight goes both ways, of course. It seems safe to say that the Chinese ban on all shipments of gallium, germanium, and antimony to the U.S. was a response. Threatening NVIDIA makes sense on a few fronts. The company's H100 GPUs were used to train the vast majority of generative AI models used today, something that doesn't seem likely to change with the Blackwell chips NVIDIA announced earlier this year. That's made it one of the most valuable companies in the world, as AI speculation has run rampant and a big target for governmental oversight. Plus, Bloomberg writes that NVIDIA gets some 15% of its revenue from China. However the investigation resolves, NVIDIA feels like a logical next step to escalate the U.S. and China's conflict even further. Thanks for listening. There's more to these stories and additional articles at Engadget.com. This episode featured journalism from Ian Carlos Campbell and was voiced and produced from the sound studios of Spoken Layer. Enjoy your day, and I'll be back tomorrow with more tech news from Engadget.